Hi, everybody. My name is Linda Abraham. I'm the founder and president of Accepted, and I'm going to be presenting Get Accepted to INSEAD this morning, or morning where I am. I'm going to find out where you are in a little bit. Um, just a little bit about me. I've been an MBA admissions consultant for over 20 years, and you can see a little bit more about me on the screen. A few items worth noting before we start. Number one, we're going to have a contest towards the end of the webinar based solely on content presented during the webinar, and you could win a 15-minute consultation, free 15-minute consultation with me if you win the contest. So that's number one. Number two, if you've not yet downloaded your webinar worksheet, take a second to do so now. We've prepared this worksheet. It's in the handout section of your control panel, and I think it will really help you get the most out of the webinar and just follow along, stay focused in the webinar. Again, you can just download it. I recommend that you print it out and use it to take notes. Now, there will be times in the webinar when I may ask you to raise your hand in response to a question, and I'd like you to test your hand-raising ability. Raising your hand does not mean waving it in front of the webcam or your monitor. That won't do any good. What you need to do is click on the hand icon, two icons underneath the horizontal orange arrow. So please raise your hand if you are attending this webinar because you want to attend INSEAD to prepare you for the career of your dreams. Raise your hand if you want to attend INSEAD because you believe it will prepare you for the career of your dreams. Okay, most of you are here for the right reasons and have figured out how to raise your hand. Good start for the presentation. Okay. Now, we're going to use, again, I will ask some yes or no questions, where hand raising will be appropriate, but I'm also going to ask open-ended questions. And for those open-ended questions, I'd like you to respond in the question window, because we're going to use that window for both your questions and your answers. If you have questions that you want to raise in response to something I say, please feel free to do so. You can post them in the question window. I probably will address them at the end when I've scheduled time for a Q&A. If I ask you a question and it's an open-ended question, please respond in the question window. I'm told that some people attending a webinar really are interested in the special that we sometimes provide at the end of the webinar. They're even so anxious that it takes away from their focus on the content. And I don't want that to happen to you. So I'm going to tell you the special right now, and it's a good one. $300 off any MBA application package. The special ends February 20th, so you have a week to talk to a consultant first if you want. Coupon code SAVE300. Now, the approach that I'm recommending during the webinar is very much aligns with the kind of comprehensive package that we're offering a special on today. And before diving into the heart of the webinar, I'd like to learn a little bit about you. So in the question window, please, where are you located? City and state if you're in the United States, city and country if you're outside the United States. And that would be in the question window. Toronto, Canada, welcome. Chicago, Illinois, France, New York, UK, India, Delhi, India, Pune and Delhi, okay. Mumbai, okay. Bangalore, London, England, Dubai, great. Yerevan, Armenia, okay, welcome. Near and far. Anybody in California? That's where I am. I guess I'm going to have to raise my hand for that one. Okay. And I also want, now that I know where you're at geographically, I'd like to know where you're at in the application process. So you're going to see a poll on your screen right now. And the options are applying for September 2019 intake, applying for January 2020 intake, planning to apply for a later intake. All right, we're at 70% having voted. Can we get it up? 5, 4, anybody else want to vote? 3, 2, 1, great. We're at 80% having voted, and here's the results. Okay, so 90% of you are planning for September 2019. 63% of you are planning for the January 2020 intake, which is great because you've got time. And 90% of you are planning ahead for a later intake. All are welcome. There's time for all of you, actually. And that's, again, with 80% of you having voted. So we got good participation. Great. Okay, now next poll is how committed are you to applying to INSEAD? The options are definitely, maybe, and doubt it, but you can convince me. Okay. All right, great. We're at 86% having voted. Anybody else? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. 90% participation. And the results are definitely 68%, maybe 26%, and 5% doubt it, but you can convince me. Okay, so we have a pretty committed group here today, which I expected. And all right, let's move on. But thank you for that. Now, so in the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to go through the 4 key steps that you need to take as you apply to INSEAD. This is basically a 4-part framework. Each element is key and critical and necessary to a successful application. I'm also going to issue some caveats and warnings as we go through this webinar. And the first one is going to come now. You're not going to get in by putting on some makeup. You're not going to get in by magic tricks, and spin won't do it either. What you need to do is submit a substantive application. And in my mind, substance means competitive qualifications and an effective presentation of those qualifications. In other words, you need to demonstrate fit. And again, while I'm going to provide the 4-part framework, as I mentioned before, the tactics and the focus of today's webinar is going to be strictly on INSEAD, showing fit, showing that you belong at INSEAD. And indeed, that's your overriding aim. Now, we're going to dive into the nitty-gritty, but first I want to hear from you. How do you intend, and you must have thought about this somewhat, to show that you belong at INSEAD? In the question window, please. How do you intend to show that you belong at INSEAD? Global mindset. Excellent, Joanna. Anybody else? Ambitious future plans. Okay. You're onto something there. Ability to contribute to society. Excellent. My global goals post MBA. Good. Good. International work experience. Good, Justin. Great. All right. These are all good elements. They're all part of what you need to show. And on some level, my question was a little unfair because somebody else just wrote new frontiers. I'm not sure what that means. International exposure, international career. Excellent. Excellent. That's definitely a big part of it. On some level, my question is a little unfair because I'm going to take the next, again, 45 minutes to discuss it, and you have a little box in which to put it. So you've each hit on one element that is important, at least except for the one that I didn't understand. That's great. But one of my big points is going to be that you need all elements. Okay, I'm going to lay out 4 elements. You need all 4 of them. If I have to boil it down, and this is what most of you hit on, for INSEAD, it boils down to an appetite for multicultural adventure and experience. So for example, INSEAD, I think it's the only MBA program that requires 3 languages at graduation. And basically, you need to show that you belong at the business school for the world. So the first element of the framework, let's dive into this a little bit, is demonstrate that you can do the work and excel. And indeed, one of INSEAD's stated 4 criteria is academic capacity. And you need to show that you can handle this curriculum. It's a fire hose of a curriculum. It's a 1-year program in terms of your academic preparedness, intellectual curiosity, and communication skills. The easiest way to show preparedness is through, you got it, your undergrad transcript and GMAT score. And you want to be at or above average for accepted students, ideally for both grades and test scores. If not, how can you convince INSEAD to accept you with below, let's say, for example, average grades? So realize that averages are what they are because some people get in with below average. That's just the nature of the beast. Now, Poets and Quants estimates that the GPA at INSEAD is around a 3.5 on the US 4.0 scale. If you are concerned that your undergraduate record is not up to snuff, I suggest you listen to this podcast at sibit.com/137 because there I laid out 5 steps that you should go through to mitigate the impact of a below average GPA. I'm not going to go through them here. One of those items is a high GMAT score, and that definitely, can mitigate. If your quant skills are weak, If you're the proverbial poet, but your grades are good, you can also consider something like mbamath.com or quant courses at your local college. That could be statistics for business, calculus if you have and remember the prerequisites, economics 1, accounting 1. Massive open online courses are an option. Again, if your grades are good, but you're concerned about your quant skills, HBS Online is another option. As I mentioned, high GMAT can mitigate. And for INSEAD, INSEAD is one of those programs that looks at your scores separately. You want to be at the 70th or 75th percentile in both quant and verbal, whether your grades are good or below average. For the GRE, if you apply to INSEAD with the GRE, that means, first of all, that you are applying to a dual degree program or that you come from a country where the GMAT isn't offered. And INSEAD then recommends that you're at the 85th percentile. Now, INSEAD will look at your highest verbal and highest quant scores if you take the test more than once. So it's not just the highest total, it definitely weighs them separately. If you're considerably below on either verbal or quant, consider a retake. And if you're not sure whether to retake or not, then I would recommend this resource, webinar I gave specifically on whether you should retake the GMAT or not. And yes, we will be sending out these URLs after the webinar, so you don't have to be writing them down madly. As I indicated, INSEAD does accept the GRE in limited circumstances. It has a higher standard for the GRE. It clearly prefers the GMAT. So your academic capacity, your ability to do the work is evident in your transcript and test scores, the so-called objective elements of the application. But the bottom line here is that somehow, some way, you need to show that you can do the work effectively and not struggle with basic math or communications. Now, the second part of the framework, second element, is have a clear, realistic idea why you want an MBA from INSEAD and how you intend to use it. Now, let me ask you, why do you think this is important? In the question window, please. Why do you think having a realistic idea of why you want an MBA from INSEAD and how you intend to use it, why is it important? Why do I have it as one element in this framework? They want you to get a job in 3 months. That's pretty good. So that INSEAD can be sure you'll be a good alum. That's definitely an element. Good. Good. Well, okay. So the first answer, which isn't really an answer to my question, it answers why it's important to you as an applicant, whether the college is the right fit. Good. Good. The first reason it's important for you as an applicant is because INSEAD asks a question. Discuss your short and long-term career aspirations with an MBA from INSEAD. All right, so that's part of it. Pratik, you're closest so far. The other reason is that INSEAD is a very short program. As Pratik wrote in the question window, it's a 10-month school. It's a 10-month course. You simply must know what you want out of it because recruiting starts immediately. So that's part of it, and so that you can get a job 3 months out, as Justin suggested. Yes, that's part of it. So you can be a good alum. Absolutely, all those are important reasons. And let's just discuss for a moment what a post-MBA goal should look like. So the classic short-term MBA goal is function, what you want to do, and the industry in which you want to do it. And that's how you need to define your short-term goals. You can go into motivation, you can go into other things also, but it has to be clear what exactly you want to do and in what industry you want to do it. Now, INSEAD also asks about long-term goals, and your long-term goals can be a little bit less specific, and they can, and I think probably it's to your advantage if they do, include a greater vision or societal good if that's motivating you. And I think this element has become more important with INSEAD's brand or the evolution of its brand as announced in October 2018. The statement was, and I'm quoting now, "We bring together people, cultures, and ideas to develop responsible leaders who transform business and society." That is now INSEAD's mission. We bring together people, cultures, and ideas to develop responsible leaders who transform business and society. So your short-term goal should be related to the long-term goal. And again, if you have some societal good or greater contribution that you're looking to make, other than supporting yourself and your family, then bring it out. If you're attempting to change both industry and function, You may want to consider having your short-term goal be a change of one and the long-term goal being the second change. But INSEAD is actually very proud of the fact that a significant percentage of its class changes both industry and function, and some change industry, function, and location. Now, the thing to keep in mind here as you're thinking about the second element is admissions should be able to connect the dots between where you've been and what you want to do via INSEAD's program, career strengths, and extracurricular opportunities. And they should also, okay, somebody can't hear me. Can you just raise your hand if you can hear me, please? Can you? All right. Okay, so most of you are hearing me. Great. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, so you should be able to, admission should be able to connect the dots between what you've done and what you want to do via INSEAD's program, career strengths, and extracurricular opportunities. And they should be convinced that you, not only that they can connect the dots, but that you have connected the dots. And that may only come out in the interview rather, but you should be able to do it. Okay, the third part of the framework. Show that you share INSEAD's values and meet its criteria. Now, INSEAD's motto, as I mentioned earlier, is the business school for the world. Indeed, it has 3 campuses in 3 different areas of the world: France, Singapore, and Abu Dhabi. It has additional alliances with Wharton in the US, Tsinghua in China, and the Sorbonne in France. Now, let's talk about what INSEAD says its criteria are. I'm not, that comment did not mean to demean this at all. I believe their criteria are exactly what they say there are. I just want to dive into them and analyze them a bit. So the first one is ability to contribute, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Academic capacity, we already discussed. Let's go into international motivation, which most of you hit on at the beginning of the webinar when I asked how you're going to show fit with INSEAD. Now, most INSEAD students have worked or studied outside their home countries. And you must show that you are comfortable, and here I'm quoting, comfortable interacting in diverse communities and are committed to pursuing a global career, close quote. So the best way to demonstrate a comfort in interacting in diverse communities is frankly to live abroad, to live outside your home country. But you can also do so through personal travel, working in multinational corporations, learning foreign languages, interacting with different cultures within your own home country. These are all ways to possibly demonstrate multicultural fluency and a comfort level with diversity. INSEAD requires that you know at least 2 languages well upon admission, and they want you to pick up a third before you graduate. That gives you 1 year on top of your MBA curriculum. So they're very serious about this international motivation. Then the fourth element is leadership potential. INSEAD wants applicants who can demonstrate their potential as leaders. They don't want to create leaders. Again, they want to develop leadership that already exists within you. So you have to show some leadership. And that leadership can be reflected in the number of people reporting to you, the financial impact of your projects and initiatives, the size of the assets you manage, or the deals you've worked on. There are lots of different ways to show leadership and impact. But somewhere or sometime, there had to be, and hopefully not too long ago, there had to be an occasion when the buck stopped with you and you took responsibility for an outcome. That is leadership. It can be in a professional venue. It can be a volunteer capacity. INSEAD seems to prefer seeing leadership on the job. And indeed, the average age of INSEAD students is slightly older than the average for most U.S. programs. It's right around 6 years of work experience. The average amount of work experience is slightly higher, I should say, more than age. Now, again, I think showing that you identify with INSEAD's mission, right? We bring together people, cultures, and ideas to develop responsible leaders who transform business and society is going to be increasingly important. Not so much in this 2019 cycle because the mission was announced only in October, but certainly for the 2020 rounds, I think that's going to just be more and more important. Now here comes one of my warnings. There's a major difference between mouthing platitudes, spitting back websites, and showing that you actually share the value. The former, the platitudes, the spit back, that is frankly just putting on makeup. And trust me, makeup only hides a few wrinkles, not the big ones. Um, Spamming them with phrases from their website or mantra-like repetition of business school for the world, leadership potential, or international motivation, that simply won't cut it. But examples in your essays and job descriptions, bullet points in your resume, your letters of recommendation, the responses to interview questions should in total show that you both have what INSEAD is looking for and can benefit from what INSEAD offers. To me, acceptance to INSEAD is about the leadership that most business schools are looking for and that multicultural fluency, as well as an interest in contributing to social good. Now, what I'd like you to do at this point is either on the worksheet, the handout that we prepared, or anywhere else that you want, the back of an envelope, that also will work. I'd like you to jot down for some times some experiences, some accomplishments when you demonstrated leadership and multicultural fluency. If you can't put them all in one event, then have separate events. But just notes for yourself. You don't have to put this in the question window. This is just for you. So you can walk out of here and say, I did something, okay? Again, can you jot down for yourself some experiences, hopefully accomplishments, when you both demonstrated leadership and multicultural fluency? And if you can do that, you don't have to spit back the phrases at all because you're going to be showing them the fit and not telling them. And there's a big, big, big difference. Another warning. If you focus on rankings or brand, you can really obscure this fit aspect of admissions as well as contribute to focusing on simply the wrong things. Yes, INSEAD does fantastically in the Financial Times and in Forbes, but telling them this just means you're telling them what they already know and frankly have on their website. And the result will be that you blend in and you bore. You want to stand out in a positive way. You want to show that you have the distinctive experience and perspective to contribute. However, the rankings do imply one thing of importance. INSEAD has lots of applicants and can be choosy. Its popularity and prominence lead to my last key point, the last to do for your application, and the reason behind one of INSEAD's stated 4 criteria, the one that I said we'd get to in a few minutes. Okay, so here's the 4th element of my framework. Demonstrate that you'll be able to contribute to the INSEAD community and ultimately make the school proud. So again, first element, ability is academic ability. Second, have a goal that requires an INSEAD MBA. Third is show that you share the values and meet its criteria. And fourth, demonstrate that you'll be able to contribute to the INSEAD community and ultimately make the school proud they admitted you. Now, INSEAD very clearly says on its website, more important than the length of your experience is the quality of your accomplishments. So you have to show as an applicant that you are a person of achievement and impact. So I'm going to ask you, I'd like you to answer in the question window, where have you made an impact? Where have you made a difference? What are you proud of? Please, again, in the question window. Where have you made an impact? Where have you made a difference? Here are a couple of it. All right, now we got it. Launched a national training program for my company. Okay, great, Joanna. I'd also like to know how many people participated in the training program and what was the impact of the training program? Did it cut costs? Did it accomplish something? And that's where the launching it is what you did, and that's fantastic. But the impact, what were the results of it? That's and don't forget that when you're doing your application. Led project management work for multinational client across 6 different countries. Good. That will definitely show the kind of international exposure we're talking about. I'd like to also see kind of, again, what was the size of your team? Whom were you, what was the impact? Did you finish the project on time, under budget, maybe early? Those kinds of things are important. Or this one, led a team of 17 people from countries in the US, Brazil, and India and delivered a project that was estimated to be 2,000 man hours over schedule. I assume you mean 2,000 man hours under schedule, that you did something that it's not coming through in what you wrote, but it was good. Okay, that's better. Manage project related to change and modernization, digitization in public sector. Good, good. So again, I'd like to know how many people were on your team. What was the cost savings of this project? Okay. What were the cost savings? 15 on your team. Great. $2 million. Excellent. You start adding those details, that quantification of information, and suddenly it really adds to the impact, the challenge of the project and the impact you had, and again, shows you as a leader. So I wouldn't have guessed it was a 15-person team. I could have thought it was a 2 or 3-person team. Concept creation for a fashion collection working with local artisans community across India. Okay. Did the collection sell? How many people were employed? What was the impact? I hope that what you're getting from this little exercise, and we're going to move on now, is that it's not just what you did that you want to convey, it was the impact of what you did. Was the challenge that's inherent in a large multicultural team. If you tell me 2 or 3, it's not so large. If you tell me 15, it's large. Or 17, it's large. Clearly, you have more responsibility, but just reading a team, I don't know that. Okay? So remember, when you're describing what you've done, it's not just what you've done, it's the impact you had, the results. Those are the experiences and events that you want to highlight throughout your application. So let's touch a little bit specifically on work experience, okay? There's quantitatively impressive work experience and qualitatively, not so much impressive, but competitive. Now, the average amount of work experience for INSEAD is 6 years, and that's great. But there are obviously a lot of people who work for 6 years and they don't have competitive work experience for INSEAD. So what makes competitive work experience at work in INSEAD? Well, it has to be qualitatively competitive also, all right? And by qualitatively competitive work experience, I mean that it needs to show the leadership, the international appetite, the perspective that INSEAD values, or at least some of those qualities, and, this is the key element, above average progression on the job. Now, in addition to showing them that 6 years of work experience and above average progression, you also need to present the work experience effectively. And that was a little bit of what I showed you in the exercise we just did, but I want to do another exercise, which I think will illustrate my point much better than if I just tell you. I'm going to show you. Okay, so I'm going to launch a poll now, and I want you to check all the boxes that apply to you. Okay, I work in finance or consulting. I have traveled outside my home country. I have volunteered during and or since college, and or none of the above apply to me. Okay, can we get the vote percentage up here? All right, we're at 68%, 71%. Come on, let's get it up. I work in finance or consulting. I have traveled outside my home country. I volunteered during and or since college, and none of the above apply to me. Okay, great. With 82% having voted, 84%, I'm closing the poll. That's wonderful. And we're going to share the results. So 41% of you work in finance or consulting. 88% have traveled outside your home country. 78% have volunteered, right? Travel. Okay, I'm just making some notes. And now I'm going to hide the results, and I'm going to share a different poll. And please indicate all of the following that apply to you. I work for a financial forensic consulting firm. I went trekking in the Alps. I volunteered in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, or none of the above apply to me. Okay, we're at 79%, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close the poll, and I'm going to share the results, and that's with 84% having voted. 3% of you work for a financial forensic consulting firm. 25% went trekking in the Alps. 9% volunteered in Puerto Rico. and 75% say none of the above apply. Okay? What's the difference between the two sets of questions that I asked in the last two polls? In the question window, please. What's the difference between the two sets of questions that I asked in these polls? The 6 years is from the date of matriculation. Specificity. That's right, Mirage, you got it. The latter was very specific and therefore unique to the person. Specification, right. Right, second is more specific, you got it. The first one was very general. Generic versus specific. Pratik, you're on a roll today. Okay, broad versus narrow. What happens when I ask specific questions or when we speak in specifics? What happens then? In the question window, please. You make it real, good. Differentiation, exactly, Alexandra. Differentiation. If you want to write about yourself in your application and you write that you're an engineer, you're blending in with all the other engineers or a consultant, it gives uniqueness, you stand out, exactly, you got you. We have a great audience today. If you write in specifics, you're going to automatically stand out. So are you an engineer or a transportation engineer? Are you a consultant or a healthcare consultant? Are you an accountant or a forensic accountant? Have you traveled or did you go trekking in a specific location? Did you volunteer or did you volunteer in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria? Focus on specifics will allow you to naturally stand out and to reveal yourself as the unique individual that you are. Because in general terms, you're going to be very similar. In specific terms, you're all going to be different. Now, why is distinctive contribution so important? The number one reason is that INSEAD says so. Your ability to contribute is going to be directly related to your uniqueness. Now, all of you are unique, but you have to write in a way that allows the person going through your application in 15 minutes to see it. The second reason that distinctive contribution is so important is because admissions at elite programs is a two-step process. The first part is evaluation, determining who is qualified. And top programs like INSEAD always turn away students whom they know can do the work and maybe even fit in. Selection, the second part of the process, is creating a rich, diverse learning environment from those who are evaluated as qualified. Now, if you have a lot of people who are all the same, there's not going to be as rich an environment. So this selection part of the process, injects a very subjective element into the admissions process. And it also implies that INSEAD has no reason to admit someone without something distinctive to contribute. There's no benefit to the class or to INSEAD, to the community, of accepting one lacking what it's looking for. So it's not just about the GPA and the GMAT, or the grade average and the GMAT or the GRE, right? There is this whole other element, and you'll see as we go through the application that it's really, really important. Now, let's review the 4 strategic steps you need to think about before and while putting your application together. Number 1, you need to provide evidence that you can do the work and excel. 2, you have to have a clear, realistic idea why you want an MBA from INSEAD and how you intend to use it. 3, you need to show that you share INSEAD's values, meet its criteria, and would fit into its community. And 4, you need to demonstrate that you'll be able to contribute to INSEAD's community and ultimately make the school proud. Now, let's look at the specific elements of the INSEAD application. I already touched on the grades and transcripts as well as INSEAD's values. Let's look at some of the other elements. All right, we're going to start with job and activity history. Now, you need to make the most of all these elements. All right, there's no question. It's a very competitive program. Actually, let me also let you see this, because you saw the slide up. Yeah, there we go. So you can submit your own resume or CV, or you can use INSEAD's template. It's available on its website. And the focus here, as I said in the little exercise we did a few minutes ago, should be on achievements associated with achievements throughout, okay? INSEAD either allows you to use a free-form CV or download and use their CV template, which you can find on the INSEAD website. And I don't think they really care as long as it's effective. And notice the focus, again, is on achievements, not mere descriptions of your responsibilities. For INSEAD's job history, you don't have a lot of room. It gives you actually almost no room to describe previous jobs and some room to highlight your current job and your goals. Again, focus on achievements, accomplishments, and not mere descriptions of responsibility. Quantify your impact whenever possible, much like I suggested in that exercise a little while ago. Obviously, you don't have a lot of room. You're going to have to be succinct. INSEAD gives you relatively little space to discuss community service, which I think also reflects its focus on professional achievement. You may be able to discuss a little bit in Essay 3 or in the video responses or in your interview, but obviously it is now changing its mission to have a social element to it. I suspect that this is going to change in the future. Notice the question is, please list significant extracurricular activities in which you are or have been involved, starting with your most recent activities. I want to point out that involvement and activity is active. It's not the same thing as being a member or attending meetings or even having a membership card in your wallet. Again, we're talking about assuming responsibility, participation, and leadership. Show that you have the leadership and teamwork or interpersonal skills that INSEAD is seeking. And here I'm going to quote from a recent podcast that I did with Virginia Fugia, the admissions director at INSEAD, where she said, and I'm quoting, "The motivation essays I see as the most challenging aspect, the most crucial. Together with the videos, that is the unique opportunity for applicants to introduce themselves." And that is my introduction to the essays. INSEAD has 4 essays. One is, and anyway, we're going to go through them. I would suggest before you start writing that you look at all 4 of the questions, and you'll be able to read them much more easily in a second. So don't worry about that now. But think about how to weave your experiences into the different essays. You want the essays to complement each other, not overlap or duplicate. Think of how jigsaw puzzle pieces fit together, and that is how your application elements should fit together, including the essays. Now, INSEAD is serious about the word limit, and it writes in its application guide, quote, "Each essay has a maximum word limit, which is stated under each essay box. Respecting this word limit is an important exercise to see how you express your ideas in a concise way, and you will not be able to submit your application if you exceed the word limit." So you now know for sure that they're serious. Okay, essay 1. Give a candid description of yourself. Who are you as a person? Stressing the personal characteristics you feel to be your strengths and weaknesses, and the main factors which have influenced your personal development, giving examples when necessary. Approximately 500 words, maximum 500 words, not approximately. Okay, what word appears in this question more than any other, excluding you and its derivatives, and a, and the, in the question window? And if you could respond. Again, what word appears more than any other? Personal. Exactly. Person and personal. You got it. Right. So they are not looking here for a resume in prose that nobody wants. They want you to discuss key strengths and weaknesses and how you are working on your weaknesses. And they don't want a professional treatise or a repetition of your resume. They already have that. They're trying to get to meet you through the essays, right? Remember that quote from the podcast a few minutes ago. They are an opportunity for applicants to introduce themselves, per the Director of Admissions at INSEAD. Now, in terms of the substance here, they want to know about you as a person, not as a banker or a consultant or whatever is your professional title. And they want you to discuss key strengths and weaknesses and how you are working on your weaknesses. If you can, you may not be able to do this, but if you can, try and discuss a weakness that is almost a flip side of a strength. I'm not talking about phony weaknesses. The best example I can give is from the book Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand, which was actually turned into a movie that I didn't see, but I read the book. The book is fantastic. The main character in the book is a man named Louis Zamperini, who died a couple of years ago. He actually lived not far from where I live in Torrance, California. I'm not in Torrance, but he was. He was pretty much a juvenile delinquent, and then he got himself straightened out and got into running. He ran in the 1936 Olympics in Berlin and was training for the 1940 Olympics when World War II broke out. He became a gunner. I'm pretty sure he was a gunner. He was definitely flying because he was shot down over the Pacific and survived in the Pacific for over 40 days and then was captured by the Japanese and was a POW. Now, what's interesting about his story, and again, flip side, is the absolute drive and determination that he exhibited in childhood or early teens when he was on his route to juvenile delinquency as a runner, making it to the Olympics, as a downed airman in the Pacific, and then as a POW in Japan, contributed to his survival in the last two situations, his success in the first two situations. That incredible drive and was incredibly important to his survival, and also contributed both to his delinquency as a child or early teen and to the difficulties he had once he came back to the U.S. and had to readjust to civilian life. He ultimately made it and again lived to, I think, 97, 98. An incredible story. But that drive was a strength in some situations and was a weakness and problem in others. So that would, and how he ultimately turned himself around is quite a story too. So that's one way to approach the question. Not all of you will be able to do that. Some of you may have to discuss weaknesses, strengths, and weaknesses separately. If you can, in discussing the weakness, talk about a time when, as a result of your efforts to deal with your weakness, you have also overcome it. You've handled the situation well that your weakness would have previously caused you difficulty with. Essay 2. Describe the achievement of which you are most proud and explain why. In addition, describe a situation where you failed. How did these experiences impact your relationships with others? Comment on what you learned. So this is asking for an achievement and a failure. Kind of parallels the strength and weakness focus of the previous question. And in terms of the accomplishment, state the situation of which you are most proud and reveal the challenge you faced. Quantify the result if possible. Show your ability to contribute. And remember that exercise we did a few minutes ago. Reveal what you learned in both situations, especially the interpersonal aspects of those lessons. Now, the failure can be a little while ago, and success could reflect lessons learned from the failure. And it may not be appropriate for you, but sometimes that can happen. You can be particularly proud of an achievement because you had to struggle in a similar situation that you didn't handle well previously. This is not about how to build a better spreadsheet or a program, a niftier app. Again, it's about interpersonal lessons, maybe even a leadership lesson, a teamwork lesson. All right, now essay 3, describe all types of extra professional activities in which you have been or are still involved for a significant amount of time. And that could be clubs, sports, music, arts, politics, etc. How have you been enriched? How are you enriched by these activities? Approximately, and again, it's a 300-word max. I don't know why she put approximately, but anyway. So think of your most significant non-professional commitments and activities. What are you truly proud of that would be of interest given INSEAD's criteria and mission, and that hasn't been related in the boxes and other parts of the application? This could be involvement, as I say, in sports, the arts, travel, politics, an ethnic group, a religious group, and it could be a challenge you face in achieving what you've achieved. It could be a pivotal moment. It should be something that only you can write about, and you should write about it specifically for this application. It should not be a repeat or rehash of events discussed elsewhere in the application unless you can provide much greater depth or context about those experiences. And it shouldn't be a cut and paste of another school's essay, because those schools won't have specifically INSEAD's focus and values. So the key question in number 3 is, how have these activities enriched you? What do you get from the activity? That should be the focus. All right, now that last question is there anything else that was not covered in your application that you would like to share with your admissions committee? If you have nothing to say, don't say anything. No grand finales or summaries, please. However, If you have something that you would like INSEAD to know that's nowhere else in the application, tell them. And most of you will. It could be, context for a dip in grades, employment gap, or something like that. But it could also be something very positive, like some experience that you just didn't have a chance to go into, that you think INSEAD should know about. Now, INSEAD also has the video component of its application, where you're going to be asked to respond to 4 questions. And you can practice with some practice questions and have up to 1 week after the submission deadline to submit the video. INSEAD recommends, and so do I, that you don't wait for the last minute to do the video. That'll just make you nervous and service overload and all that. Now, why do you think that INSEAD asks for the video in addition to the essays and the application? Why do you think INSEAD wants the video? They want to see how you present yourself. Excellent. Add a different dimension to the application. Good, Vanilla. But I think Jabel really hit on it. I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name. To have a better feel of the person. Okay. Gives you a 3D dimension. Poise, communications. I think poise is critical. Presence. Only the alumni take the interview. That's another good point. I want to get to know you personally a little bit more. Personality. To understand how what you've written fits into your personality. I'm not quite sure that's right on. To check if your application is coherent with your personality. Fluency in English is definitely something they're going to be looking for. Okay. I think most of you got it. To see if we have presence and presenting skills. That's I think the key element here. They want to see how you think on your feet, how you present yourself. And frankly, this is a very inexpensive way for them to meet you and assess poise and presence. Also realize that recruiters are using video more and more. And yes, INSEAD knows that it can train you and coach you a little bit to improve your poise and presence, but they want to know that you start with something, okay? They don't want you to start with nothing. So my advice for the video is, certainly review INSEAD's advice. You may also want to look at these 2 resources, but I want to give you a little bit of advice right now. 1, make sure you have a quiet location. Roommates, dogs, kids should be out. The windows should be closed because traffic noise can be very distracting. Your phone, all alerts, alarms, etc. should be off. That's number 1. It should be quiet. Okay, so that's enough said on that. 2, one of the things I sometimes create videos. One of the things that I find very difficult, or I found challenging when I first started, is I forget to smile if I don't have a person in front of me. The camera will not smile back at you. The webcam just kind of sits there. There's no affect. So what I do is I put a smiley face under the camera to remind me to smile. I suggest you do the same. In terms of attire, you want to present yourself as a professional, as a future business leader. Best dress in a professional way. Business or business casual, if you can't stand a tie, guys, is the way to go. But I would recommend that I personally would come in a suit, recommend a suit. And also make sure that the area around you, anything that's in the camera's view, is neat. It doesn't have to be, a professional studio, but it should be neat. All right, let's go on to recommendations. There are 2 recommendations required. INSEAD prefers professional recommendations. At least one should come from the current employer. The point of the recommendation should be to, quote, assess your ability to work with and manage others, as well as your potential for senior management. And from the recent podcast with Virginia Fugia that I've referred to a couple of times, the first thing people need to understand is that they should select people who know them really well in their day-to-day activities, since there are questions related to leadership potential and ability to contribute. So the recommender should be able to assess those qualities or they aren't appropriate. INSEAD allows you to submit a 3rd optional recommendation, and the recommendations can be submitted anytime up to the deadline. In terms of the 3rd optional recommendation, if you have somebody who can present a different perspective, maybe from a previous job, go for it. If not, I don't think it's that important. My criteria for recommendations: 2 people who know you well, Don't be seduced by title and choosing recommenders. INSEAD isn't. So your immediate supervisor is far better than the senior vice president whose hand you shook exactly once. And then you should ask your recommenders, this is the second criteria for me, if they are willing to write you a strong, positive letter of recommendation in the time frame available. If there is hesitation for any reason, just move on, ask somebody else. You may want to share with your recommenders our 10 tips for recommenders that will encourage them to write in specifics, give concrete examples, much like I've suggested to you today, and focus on leadership and impact. What about INSEAD's interview? Well, somebody mentioned before that the interview at INSEAD is an alumni interview. It is typically in or near your country. It is a combination of traditional interview questions like walk me through your resume and behavioral questions like tell me about a time when you did X. How should you prepare? First, know how you intend to use the INSEAD experience and education to achieve your goals. Know what appeals to you about the INSEAD MBA. Why do you want to go there, specifically there? Be prepared to, and it can't be just because of rankings. Be prepared to discuss multicultural and international experience and motivation for international business. You may try and review GMAT Club or Beat the GMAT threads or perhaps MBA forums in your local country so you can see interview feedback. And then review your application before your interview. We also do provide formal mock interviews, and you're more than welcome to take advantage of those. Prepare to explore your past experiences to show fit with INSEAD's values and criteria. And I would suggest that before you go into interview, you review your application because your interviewer will not, and your best stories, your best experiences, and your attempt to show fit in INSEAD will be in the application. In addition, I also suggest that you jot down a few achievements and write which of INSEAD's criteria are revealed in those events. And at the same time, write down some of INSEAD's criteria and think about experiences you've had, achievements, accomplishments that reveal those qualities. So you can go either way. You can talk about an experience and then draw from them the qualities that INSEAD is looking for, or you can be asked about a quality and immediately have experiences to relate that support the idea that you indeed have those qualities. All right, let's go back to your conclusion. I am going to get to the Q&A. I'm running a little late, but we're going to do it even if we go over a little bit. Now, let's go back to your goal in submitting an application to INSEAD. It's show that you belong at INSEAD. And as you see on your screen, we're going to have a contest now. The first three to answer the next question right gets a free 15-minute consultation with me. And your hand should be over the keyboard now. What is INSEAD's tagline? Not mission, tagline. Okay, we got it. Ilona, Joanna, and Mirage got it. Business school for the world. Exactly. Okay. Brianna, are you jotting those names down? Congratulations. You're right. It's business school for the world. Good. Great. Thank you. So Brianna will be in touch with you. And let's review one more time the 4 ways to show that you belong at INSEAD. Present the academic credentials that show you can do the work and excel. In INSEAD words, that's academic capacity. 2, have a realistic goal that requires an INSEAD MBA. And that would be your international motivation, again, in terms of INSEAD's criteria. 3, show that you meet its criteria, all 4 of them, and share its values, leadership, and it's creating leaders for business and the world on a global stage. And then 4, your ability to contribute to class and community. Demonstrate that you know how and that you're going to do this so that they know they will be proud to accept you. And just one more piece of advice, not directly related to the 4-part framework. The admissions committee readers are sharp, intelligent professionals. Don't try to trick, fake, or fool. The best presentation of you is an authentic reflection of your achievements and dreams, keeping in mind the 4 things that will make INSEAD want you. In Virginia Fujia's words during the podcast interview, be yourself. Now, I'd like a show of hands at the moment. How many of you understand that all 4 elements of my framework are important to a successful INSEAD application? Please raise your hand if you now understand that. Okay, great. Okay, most of you got it, and I'm really pleased because that was really the main takeaway I wanted to convey today for you. Acceptance to INSEAD and to other top MBA programs for that matter requires all 4 keys of this framework in your application. Not just one, not just 3 out of 4, because to get accepted, you need to show that you both belong at INSEAD, that's really parts 1 through 3 of the framework, and that you stand out in the applicant pool, that's part 4. Now, you've learned in this webinar a comprehensive approach to crafting a successful MBA application for INSEAD. You've seen why each element is important and also received a few general tips on the how. What you really need, however, is the how applied to your individual circumstances. For that, you need to get accepted and work with one of our outstanding consultants. Your consultant can guide you so that you show that you both belong at INSEAD, or whatever MBA program you're aiming for, and stand out in the applicant pool. We can mentor you in creating an application that as a whole spotlights your strengths and mitigates your weaknesses, that accomplishes everything we've discussed here today. Now, here's what you get if you engage with Accepted. You get access to expertise and experience. We've done this thousands of times. You want to do this once. You get a reduction in your stress. You save time. You can fix mistakes before they hurt you. You can optimize your application. Now, some may say that Accepted is expensive, and we're certainly not a cheap service because of the quality of our staff. However, there are expensive risks associated with not using Accepted. Reapplication can cost easily a couple $1,000s, especially if you have to retake the GMAT. One additional year of pre-MBA earnings can cost in the 5 figures in dollars. If you don't like your job, you might be dealing with, a job you don't like. And there's a potential that you could have gotten into a better program with higher lifelong earnings and network. I'll let you calculate the cost. Now, every year, we work with applicants who talked to us a year earlier and decided after taking the do-it-yourself approach and getting rejected to work with us. They would have been better off working with us initially, and so would you. But enough from me. What do Accepted's clients say? Well, here's some feedback. Today, I finished working with Michelle on all essays for INSEAD. I think at the time it was actually 8. And overall, I can simply say that her support was perfect. Or on the right, I owe my acceptance to INSEAD. I owe my acceptance to Accepted, rather. They helped me in refining my essays. And this is somebody who was accepted to INSEAD. Here's what I'd like you to do after the Q&A. Take these steps to work with an accepted MBA admissions consultant and have the kind of experience and success that these clients have had and that hundreds of others of our clients have had. Imagine yourself from now, next February, attending INSEAD at one of its campuses. Yes, it's February now, and you can still work on your INSEAD application with an accepted consultant towards its March deadlines, either for September 2018 intake, where a few of you are still trying to get in, or for the January 2019 intakes, which is what most of you are aiming for. Contact us ASAP, and we'd be happy to help you from scratch or review and edit your essays. Allow us to guide you so that you present all 4 parts of the critical framework discussed today and show that you both belong at INSEAD and are a standout in the applicant pool. Now, getting the kind of comprehensive guidance from an experienced MBA admissions expert is easily worth the full cost of the package. However, we're going to make it even more worth your while. $300 off any MBA application, which is our comprehensive flat rate option, and it's the perfect match for the approach I've recommended to you today. But before you leave to select the service that's right for you, I promised you a Q&A, and I realize I am going to go over because I just took a little too long. I hope it was valuable for you. So let's start looking at questions. Let's see here. If you have any questions, please post them. All right. Somebody wrote, hold on a second, let me just stretch this out a little bit. I am 10 years old. I am 31 and have 10 years of experience. Am I too old? No. No, what you should do, you're on the older end and you're on the more experienced end, is you should, I think, make it clear that you are not relying on INSEAD to necessarily place you, and that you have very, very clear reasons for wanting the MBA at this point in time. We do have an article also on site for older MBA applicants, and Brianna, maybe you can find it and post a link to it for Havanis, okay? And I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but thank you for the question. Okay, let's see. Okay. Does that mean if I plan to come back to my home country to work, that puts me in a disadvantage? I assume that was in response to my comment about international motivation at the beginning of the webinar, that question. It's a very, very good question. And indeed, I see that you asked again, given INSEAD's global focus, does that put me at a disadvantage if I plan to come back to my home country to work? I see that you posted again. No, it doesn't put you at a disadvantage. I think you can plan to go back to your home country, but work in some kind of global capacity. You can, plan to work. I think you said you were in Canada. Go back to Canada and work for a global consultancy or a global entity in Canada. That would still be a global career. But thank you, because it's a good question. Great question. Let's see the other one here. All right. Somebody asked, how do you address that you are not currently working? I ended my last contract, and instead of renewing, I applied to other business schools. I already have 3 offers, but now I am not back at work yet and hope that doesn't reflect poorly. May I ask, how long have you been out of work? Tell you what, you'll post that and I'll get back to it. 5 months. I think it is a slight disadvantage. It's a slight issue. Schools are going to want to know why you decided not to work, and if that just means that you were applying to business school, other people apply to business school and work. So it is somewhat of an issue, and it's somewhat of a negative. If you traveled and took a vacation, if you learned something new, if you volunteered, that would be different. But just applying, it's a bit of an issue. I'm not sure it's going to keep you out, but it's not a positive. Okay. Wendy asks, if my job title is analyst with 4 years of experience, is that a disadvantage? No. What would be a disadvantage is if you basically doing the same thing this past year that you did the first year, you became an analyst. It would also be a disadvantage if at your firm, it's typical for people to become, I don't know, what would be the next senior analyst or something, and you haven't, and it's a well-known firm with a well-known career path, then schools would wonder, including INSEAD, why haven't you progressed in the way that others have, much less above average progression? But if you can show increased responsibilities, even though your title hasn't changed, then that won't be a problem at all. Okay, somebody asked, I have a GPA of 2.7 with no international experience. Is that an issue? Yes. Thank you for the question. It is an issue. You would have to, I don't know what time you came in. I did deal a little bit with low GPA, and I would suggest that you listen to accepted.com/137 where I go into that in depth. If you don't have international experience, then you have to show this international appetite in some other way. And you also would need a really good GMAT score. The 720 GMAT is good. That will help you, but again, they're going to look at both the quant and the verbal. And you're going to need to provide context for the low grades. Let's see what else we have. I work at a UK-based corporation which has a smaller unit in my home country where I manage one whole vertical by myself. Does that put me in a spot when I try to show impact, let's say, more number of coworkers? So you don't have anybody working for you? Is that it, Sanjita? Then you'll have to show impact in a different way. And you can show it in terms of sales, process the complexity of the process that you manage. You're just going to have to show that impact in some way other than the number of people that you manage or don't manage. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, let's see. I have a few short experiences in oil and gas service companies, but they are out of business during 2015 downturn, so cannot prove or give references in those companies. Will this be a problem? Not as long as you have 2 references since 2015. That, I hope you've been working since then, and then you can have references from them. All right. Let's see what else we have. How old can the greatest accomplishment be? I can't really answer that in a vacuum. I would assume it'll be in the last 2 to 3 years, but it really, I can't answer that without more context and knowing a whole lot more about you. Okay, now, whoops, screen jumped. Is it better to have 1 professional and 1 volunteer reference or 2 professional references? For INSEAD, 2 professional. Thank you for the question. All right. Julia asks, hi, Linda. I took the GMAT and got a 680. So I met the 75th percentile for verbal, but not for the rest. I retook it twice, but wasn't able to improve my score. I'm aiming for round 1. Do you recommend postponing to round 2 or submitting my application and retaking it afterwards? Sending my admissions officer, sending an update. Well, that's a tough one. Do you think you can raise it? I mean, you've taken it, I guess, 3 times and you haven't been able to raise it. What would you change that would lead you to believe you can raise it this time around? Okay, I'm not seeing a response from Wendy, so I'm going to go on because I'm not sure if basically she has to change, or Julia rather, if she has to change something in her prep in order to try and get a different outcome. All right, so here she wrote, I took it 3 times and I'm not sure if I would be able to raise it. That's why I'm reluctant to postpone to round 2 and have been just focusing on the essays. I think that makes sense. Clearly, it's an issue. And what I would do is just try and beef up your quant skills. Either take mbamath.com, take quant courses on your own, and show them that you're working on those skills to basically say the quant score doesn't really reflect your ability. Okay, so I think you're approaching it correctly by just applying round 1, focusing on your essays and doing the best you can with what you've got. But I would try and address any possible quant skills as I indicated. Okay. All right, and Julia added, I have a great quant scores in college and actually was an assistant teacher of calculus too in college. That's all very good. And you might want to address that in the optional. Okay, but anyway, okay. I do agree with you that you should just plow ahead. Okay. Snell asks, does INSEAD look at the IR and the AWA score as well? Yes. I think they weigh the quant and the verbal more, but they look at them all. Okay. All right. So at this point, I want to thank you for your time, your attention, your questions, and your answers. And I have a final thought and story before we part. And I want to thank you for sticking with me because I know I've gone over. Raj, not his real name, really wanted to go to INSEAD, but he had an average GMAT score and fairly typical profile. When he first contacted us, he wrote, I need help in structuring, drafting, and further refining my essays from multiple business schools. After his acceptance to INSEAD, he had this to say. Got the call from INSEAD today and will be joining the France campus, the French campus in France. I cannot describe in words how grateful am I for your support, help, and guidance through the application procedure. This would not have been possible without you, and thanks a lot for bearing with me. Now, you folks are at a crossroads now. You can take a do-it-yourself approach to your application process and professional future, or you can work with professionals to optimize your application. The clients I've quoted, several times during the webinar, towards the end of the webinar, they've invested in their future and are now either at INSEAD or are alumni of INSEAD. Follow their path to application and professional success, because that professional success and that dream career is what this whole process is really about.